Opinion Blood, Terror, and Nukes. Modi's doctrine breaks 75 years of Indian strategic ambiguity. Prime Minister Narendra Modi gave a historic speech on May 12, 2025, in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. In clear, unequivocal language, he articulated what now constitutes India's first publicly declared and assertively defined national security doctrine. India's national security doctrine has historically been marked by ambiguity, reactive diplomacy, and strategic restraint. Unlike nations such as the United States or Israel, which have long-standing and codified security strategies, India's posture had remained largely implicit in accumulation of responses shaped by war, diplomacy, and internal consensus. For decades, India pursued peace through dialogue even as Pakistan-sponsored terrorism inflicted repeated injuries, from the 1993 Bombay blasts to the 2611 attacks in Mumbai, to Pulwama and the most recent Pahalgam massacre. Yet, the absence of a publicly stated doctrine often left India's responses open to interpretation or second-guessing by both allies and adversaries. That vacuum has now been filled. Policy thinkers like Ram Madhav, a senior BJP leader and former National General Secretary, also presaged this articulation. In an article, "It's Time India Framed a National Security Doctrine," the Indian Express, May 10, 2025, Madhav argued for the urgent need to formulate a coherent strategic framework. He stressed that while India's armed forces are operationally capable, lacking a guiding doctrine results in reactive and fragmented responses to security threats. He critiqued the limitations of India's 2003 nuclear doctrine, emphasized the continued threat from adversaries like Pakistan and China, and urged the adoption of a doctrine based on core principles, not rigid manuals. Citing China's strategy of subduing adversaries without combat, Madhav called for India to proactively shape the regional security environment, rather than just respond to it. Modi's doctrine asserts that terror and diplomacy cannot coexist. India will no longer engage in peace negotiations with Pakistan unless terrorism ceases entirely. This marked the end of the composite dialogue process and redefined the boundaries of bilateral engagement. He added that blood and water cannot flow together, effectively suspending the Indus Waters Treaty. This symbolized the severing of cooperative mechanisms amid continued hostility. Operation Sindoor, Modi declared, is not an isolated reprisal but a template for future engagements, swift, surgical, and deliberate. Finally, and most crucially, Modi warned that India will not be blackmailed by nuclear threats, directly addressing Pakistan's habitual invocation of its nuclear arsenal to constrain India's military options. In his words, India will take action it deems necessary to defend its sovereignty, irrespective of nuclear posturing. The United States, by contrast, has institutionalized its national security doctrine through formal publications like the National Security Strategy (NSS), updated regularly by the executive branch. After the 911 attacks, President George W. Bush articulated a dramatic shift in the U.S. posture in the 2002 NSS, declaring that we will not hesitate to act alone, if necessary, to exercise our right of self-defense by acting preemptively. This doctrine, shaped by National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice, introduced the principles of preemptive self-defense, unilateral action, and a global war on terror. It aimed to disrupt and destroy terror networks before they could act. Democracy promotion became a pillar, with Bush asserting, "The United States will use this moment of opportunity to extend the benefits of freedom across the globe." Subsequent administrations adapted the doctrine. President Obama emphasized intelligence-driven, limited-footprint strategies like drone warfare and special operations. President Trump focused on trade and tariffs as leverage and prioritizing national needs over global commitments. Turning every national security question into an economic solution. The constant threat of non-state actors and hostile neighbors shapes Israel's security doctrine. Founded on the belief in immediate retaliation and overwhelming force, it is best described by the doctrine of deterrence through disproportionality. Israel maintains a posture of ambiguity regarding its nuclear capabilities, but takes no such ambiguity when responding to terrorism or rocket attacks. The Dahiya doctrine, named after Israel's 2006 operations in Lebanon, emphasizes the deliberate targeting of infrastructure in hostile territory to deter future aggression. As Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu once remarked, "Our enemies must know that we will exact a heavy price for every attack on Israeli citizens." Tools like the Iron Dome air defense system and targeted assassinations of Hamas and Hezbollah leaders are integral to this doctrine, which blends tactical immediacy with strategic messaging. China's national security doctrine is encapsulated in the principle of active defense, a Maoist concept institutionalized in recent decades. It is both defensive in justification and offensive in execution. The Chinese white papers on national defense routinely emphasize sovereignty, territorial integrity, and political stability as the core objectives. China's doctrine is deeply integrated with internal stability measures, viewing separatism in Tibet, unrest in Xinjiang, and dissent in Hong Kong as national security threats. Beijing employs asymmetric strategies such as cyber intrusions, maritime militias, and economic coercion, especially against Taiwan, Japan, and Southeast Asian nations. President Xi Jinping has consistently emphasized that the Chinese military must be able to fight and win wars. Under his leadership, The PLA has undergone rapid modernization with a focus on integrated command, hypersonic missile systems, and artificial intelligence warfare. The Belt and Road Initiative, while economic on the surface, is a geopolitical instrument embedded in China's broader security calculus. Swipe left for next video. Modi's articulation of India's doctrine is a watershed moment in South Asian strategic history. It closes the era of ambiguity and opens a new era of strategic assertiveness. Like the Bush Doctrine post 9/11, Israel's deterrence model, or China's expansive active defense, India now possesses a coherent and public doctrine that serves to deter, respond, and signal its global intentions. It is a doctrine forged not just in the halls of diplomacy, but in the crucible of repeated violence, and its clarity will shape India's future responses and its role as a security anchor in the Indo-Pacific. Yadish Rajabhat is a public policy researcher and works at the Gurgaon-based Think and Do Tank Center for Innovation in Public Policy CIPP. Views expressed in the above piece are personal and solely those of the author. They do not necessarily reflect News 18's views. Latest blogs